The Mark. Part 5. The Voluntary Act. The chief preliminary voluntary act, and it needs to be lifelong in its voluntariness, toward the inner spirit, the source and conveyor of meaning, is that of affirmation. Only by this act does all that is outward, external, and dead become connected with what is internal and alive. This is the chief of all psychological, spiritual acts. It is the preliminary, and at the same time the continually renewable act, whereby psychology, in the deepest sense, that is, the science of personal evolution, begins. The final goal of it, far ahead, is the unity of oneself. Man becomes gradually united through himself, with himself, and not merely with what he accidentally has become and believes himself to be. Affirmation is not by argument, but by understanding. Negation leads always to an inner deprivation, and so to an increasing superficiality, impatience, loss of meaning, and violence. One can always deny what is easier. One can always follow the path of negation if one evades all acts of understanding as sentimental or as scientifically and commercially valueless. We know, however, better than we argue, better even than we think. But once a man sets out on the path of negation with malice, as many today, he finds on every side all the proofs and corroboration he requires. Consider the effect of suspicion in this respect. Yet the result is a lie, as we all know. The psychological effect of affirmation is entirely in the reverse direction. To grow, one must affirm. Denial as an end is violent, coercive, destructive. Now all that hidden, half-felt side in us which can develop cannot be coerced. That is why the senses do not give us a clear proof, an unmistakable affirmation of intelligence and meaning behind the scheme of things. A clear sensory proof would coerce the mind, as, say, a god visible in the bright sky. The conviction that there must be something, when it springs from the understanding, the inner intimate reflections, coerces no one. It opens the mind in certain vitally important directions. We can all be dragged down by the aspect that seen life presents, its horrors, injustice, and suffering. Take life sensorially as seen, and we can get nowhere. But that may be part of the plot of the play. Man has far more in him by birth than sense or its derivatives. Mechanical evolution cannot explain his unused or rarely used side. And if the scheme is development within the field of one's own consciousness, if each person is a potential development through the use of inherent powers, always private to himself, then we could never expect that life, as seen and given, would be of such a nature as to produce no deep problem and no lifelong struggle in it. On the contrary, we would expect that it would contradict him. Development must mean effort, and if life were sweet and beautiful, without pain or misery, there would be no incitement towards self-creation, no struggle whereby we come to recognize the finer ingredients we possess and separate them from the coarser. We slowly learn that in every situation fine and coarse are mingled. In our physical construction, we have finely adjusted nervous instruments whereby we reject bad food. We have also a digestive machinery which assimilates the finer and eliminates the coarser. But in the realm of living of our lives, a corresponding machinery does not exist. It has to be created, and this creates us. For this reason, in every age, we need teaching of a special sort. What, for example, is the inner meaning of the parables in the Gospels, save an indication of how to create such a selective machinery, and so how to become man? Here is a method of self-creation, once we understand and apply the given ideas. At this point, it can be said, a man begins to exist, realizing suddenly what it means to begin to live consciously. He is no longer a creature driven to and fro by circumstances, by fashion, and by the latest craze. He is no longer so much a slave to the terrible machinery of life in which everyone is turning. He no longer thinks only in terms of a sense-engendered life, for he has within him another system. By this, he finds a new relation to what he experiences. Ideas different from the ideas he acquired from brute life enter and awaken his mind, and listening, the meaning of these ideas gradually unfolds in his understanding. The first stage of a development of his whole being is set in motion. In his intimate conversation with himself, he talks to himself in a new way, and the listener in him hears and begins to stir. The facts of life do not penetrate us deeply. The listener is continually misled by them, but some ideas can penetrate to depths that we have not previously known and stir energies that we have never experienced. End of part 5. The Mark.